Amy, what is our fourth main topic today?
Our final main topic comes from Cece, who said, Sony, Sony, Sony. A new report has indicated that Kevin Feige warned Sony Pictures not to get too ahead of itself with building its own Spider-Man cinematic universe. What do you think this means? Move on. Thank you for your show.
All right, thanks a lot for saying that in, CC. Yeah. And yeah, look, of course, this is one of the most intriguing and has been ever since the day. I still remember exactly where I was. Me, Dennis Zen, and Amy Rose Eisenbach were standing in the foyer of a hotel in Atlanta, Georgia, at an AMC conference. I was a keynote speaker at their annual big convention thing. And it was late at night. We were out down by the bar. A lot of people were gathered out there. And the news broke on our phones that Sony and Marvel had made a deal for Spider-Man to be in the MCU. That Sony, and it was a really interesting deal, that Sony would actually maintain control of the character, still have the rights to it. And the way it was all going to work is very interesting. It has remained one of the most interesting things in the movie industry, as Spider-Man is in the MCU, but he's still controlled by Sony, and Sony gets to make these other movies involving Spider-Man characters. Interesting. Some of the results have been extraordinary. Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse, I don't just believe is like one of the great animated films, I think it's one of the great films of the last 5 years. I thought it was like in a year where Avengers Endgame and Black Panther came out, I thought Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse was the best comic book movie that year. I believe that to this day. And by the way, they showed us a chunk of Across the Spider-Verse at CinemaCon this year, even a lot of the unfinished animation, and they ain't missing a beat. This looks every bit as good as Into the Spider-Verse did, so I'm very excited about that. Then they did Venom. A lot of the critics didn't like it. I don't give an F. I love that movie. I love the first Venom. The audience response to made like $800 million at the box office when everybody said, you can't do Venom without Spider-Man. Yes, you can. And it worked. Made tons of money. Everybody was happy. I enjoyed Venom 2. It was not as good as the first Venom. But especially in the COVID era in which it came out, it still did very well financially. I mean, a lot less than the original Venom, but there were other circumstances, of course. That was fine. Morbius. One of my most anticipated films of the year. Woo! That did not turn out so well. So Morbius is Morbius. But we know that Sony loves Kevin Feige. They talk about Kevin Feige all the time. They love their partnership and working with them. Kevin Feige adds his name as an executive producer on a lot of their movies, even though he doesn't functionally really do anything on them. But still, they confer and they talk. Now, this comes to us from the folks over at MovieWeb, who write the following. A new report courtesy of The Ankler reveals that Feige has issued a warning to the studio, that's Sony, regarding their Spider-Man spinoffs. And yes, Marvel's Kevin Feige does weigh in and offer notes on Sony Marvel movies and that don't feature Spider-Man. One insider, credits Feige for guiding Sony's approach and warning the studio not to get too ahead of itself in terms of building some larger universe in the vein of the Avengers movies. All right. I love that comment because one of the worst things that Sony has ever done, because in my opinion, even though we have Homecoming, Far From Home, and No Way Home, Marvel has failed to make the best Spider-Man movie, and they've failed to make the two best Spider-Man movies. Because in my opinion, Sony has made the two best Spider-Man movies in Spider-Man 2 and Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse. But the worst thing Sony ever did with Spider-Man was when you got to The Amazing Spider-Man 2. And I really like the first Amazing Spider-Man. But you get into The Amazing Spider-Man 2, and that's where we got our first glimpse that Sony was desperate not to make a great movie, because they had made great movies. Desperate for a big cinematic universe, just like Marvel. And you watch The Amazing Spider-Man 2 with all these characters, they're clearly just trying to set up Sinister Six, and it was one of the biggest turd drops they ever done. Then they have a couple of wins, Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse, Venom, things like that. They come to Morbius. And what do? History repeats itself. Because after a bad movie and the credits start to roll, the worst post-credit scenes in cinematic history happens. Where once again, Sony showed that they are desperate not to create a great movie, but to create a shared cinematic universe just like Marvel. And they had Vulture flying in, which made no logical sense. We won't go into it right now, but that entire sequence logically made no sense whatsoever. It says, I think we should team up. Yeah, Mike, that sounds great. And again, that's not what
exactly
made
like that, John. You said exactly like that.
exactly like that. And it's not like that made Morbius bad. Morbius was a badly made movie. That's all. It doesn't matter how excited I was for it. It was just a badly made movie. Had a few things going for it, but still, just a badly made movie. But Kevin Feige has warned them about getting ahead of themselves. And here's the thing. They've got, coming up now, you might say, hey, since 2018, Venom and SpiderMan Across the Spider-Verse, that's not really getting ahead of yourself. But it's their desperation to form some kind of big shared cinematic universe. And here's the thing. They have in development and in production right now, Kraven the Hunter, which I am excited about, Madam Web.
Wait, what?
El Muerto,
SpiderMan.
which I think they went out and cast Bad Bunny.
Oh, yeah.
Again, let's go get a non-actor to play the lead in this role. Whatever.
There's going to be a bet with that movie with me and you. I know it just because.
Hey, you know me, I hope for the best. I hope it's going to be great. And a Venom 3 on top of that. And they've got a couple of Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse movies coming.
Oh, and Spider-Woman with Olivia Wilde, right? And
Yes. Yeah, Olivia Wilde's working on Spider-Woman. So that's not on their immediate schedule right now, but apparently that's still happening. So they got a lot going on. And the one big concerning thing is, like, I'm not concerned about a bad movie, right? Because to me, Sony went 3 in a row that were quite good, ranging from fantastic to pretty good. Spider-Man and the Spider-Verse, fantastic. Venom 2, pretty good. And Venom right there in the middle. And then you hit a bad one with Morbius. I'm okay with having the odd bad movie. That's right. But the concerning part was, again, at the end of Morbius, them showing we're all about trying to create a big shared cinematic universe. And I think they are prioritizing that over just making a good, solid standalone movie, which might be why Spider-Man into the Spider-Verse does so well, because you can't incorporate that into a big shared cinematic universe, at least until Sony finds a way to do it. So, yeah, I hear what he's saying. We want to take a moment and thank the sponsor of today's video, Storyblocks. Guys, I have been an enthusiastic fan and user of Storyblocks for years. I go to them whenever I'm in need of content creation assets like royalty-free music, video clips, or templates for my creative projects, ranging anywhere from little editorial videos to my very own full-feature documentary. Storyblocks helps you bring your stories, videos, and projects to life without sacrifices due to time, budget, or access to resources. They have over 1 million different story assets ranging from stock videos, audio and music, an in-browser video editor, and they feature pre-designed templates, animations, and outros. Storyblocks uses an affordable subscription model, and their unlimited access plans offers, well, unlimited video and audio downloads rather than a costly pay-per-clip model. With Storyblocks, you'll be able to create more content and, more importantly, better content, all while using a subscription plan that fits your budget, utilizing unlimited downloads of demand-driven and diverse content. So if you're interested in upping your content creation game, head over to www.storyblocks.com/Campea and get started today. That's www.storyblocks.com/Campea. Anyway, Rob, you hear these comments. What do you make of this situation, and where's the status of Sony, and how do you interpret Kevin Feige's words here?
You know what, John? Ever since I started doing Heroes with you and Schnepp 7 years ago, I created the Burnett axiom, which is never put your universe before your characters. And I see this happening in a lot of franchises because everybody wants to get to Kevin Feige's Avengers Endgame and Infinity War numbers.
Yeah.
I get it. I understand. But there's a reason why he got to those numbers. You know, he had to build and build and build. You have to start with your great characters. And Morbius, to me, is a textbook example. First of all, I think that the filmmakers set out to make a movie and the studio balked. They decided we couldn't make an R. Where's the blood in that movie? You know, it's a film that looks to me that it was interfered with in post for whatever reason, that it didn't. You shouldn't be there. You should know exactly.
Just to be clear, though, we have never heard any official account that suggests that there wasn't.
No, I'm just a complete assumption that I'm making, because the film feels like it was interfered with to me. And the thing is, like what Kevin Feige is saying, he's like the E.F. Hutton of building universes for cinema. I mean, he has proven himself time and time again. And while you pointed out the Spider-Man movies that Sony has made, the Raimi Spider-Man, Spider-Man 2, and Into the Spider-Verse, they don't have to deal with their other larger universe. Those movies were, Into the Spider-Verse was unto itself, introducing Miles Morales, and it's beautifully done. Beautifully done on every level. And then Spider-Man 2, coming off of Raimi's Spider-Man 1, this is when superheroes were new. There was X-Men and Spider-Man, that's it. And no one was thinking about building an MCU at this point. It was just like, let's make the best movie we can. The problem is, they're also trying to build a Spider-Verse without Spider-Man in the movies. So all of these characters, like Morbius, while he's fronted his own comics, he's really a secondary character. Kraven the Hunter is cool when he's coming after Spider-Man. But now they're trying to create these characters and turn them into their own, and they have to be, they're like anti-heroes.
And Madam Web.
And Madam Web, too, another example. And the thing is, Morbius, it's like you kind of have to soft pedal him and make him everyone's friend. He's not really bad. He's a hero, sort of. And when you're doing that, you're undercutting the very character that you're trying to adapt, which violates my axiom.
You know what? It almost felt like they were, like they wanted to use as their template Jeff Goldblum's version of The Fly, right? As Morbius, but they were never able to get there or execute it.
That's a great analogy. That I've never heard that. That's a really good. And you know what? That's a perfect example. And what obviously you wouldn't have to, you couldn't end it tragically, but that's a great example. See, people should go look at that. Now, you should be running their universe.
Now, here's the thing. Don't give them any ideas. If I were to walk into a room of 100 average movie fans, right? And I were to walk into them, say before Iron Man, say, is anybody interested here in a Captain America movie? I bet you would have seen a lot of hands go up. Yeah. Any of you guys interested in a Thor movie? I bet you would have seen a decent amount of hands go up. Walk into that same room and say, who here is interested in a Madam Web movie? I don't even know that the comic book fans are going to put their hands up. Who
I don't even know what you're talking about.
And then all the hands go up. Directed by Robert Meyer Burnett.
Yes. You know, off Femme Fatale.
You walk into that room and say, who's interested in a Kraven the Hunter? The comic book aware in that crowd would probably raise their hands.
Yeah.
But the average film fans in there are like, who, what? Like, Kevin Feige, he started his building blocks with the most recognizable IP they had available to them. They let themselves be in a position, in the best position possible to succeed when starting out. Sony has to recognize they can't do that. Like, what would have been better for them was to take the most recognizable they've got, which is Venom, and lead off with that, and that worked. Okay, you want to build out from there with what characters you got? Don't bring in Kraven the Hunter in his own movie. Have him be what's hunting Venom
100%.
in the next Venom. And then later, maybe you can spin off a Kraven movie, right? You have to understand the starting pieces you're given and where to go from there. And it seems like they've just been a bit oblivious to that. And here's hoping they can create some great movies out of it. But man, like, if Morbius is anything to go by, I hope they get closer again to Spider-Man and the Spider-Verse and the first Venom than they do with that. Anyway, Amy, you heard what Kevin Feige had to say. What do you think is the fundamental problem here? What do you make of all this?
Well, I think just to kind of piggyback on your point of, these aren't necessarily characters that people are thrilled to see. And I think when you're building things out into a cinematic universe, you then fall into the problem of who wants to see a new Spider-Man movie? And everybody raises their hand and they go, well, because you didn't see Madam Web, you're not going to understand a third of the movie.
Right.
It's I think the fundamental issue with cinematic universes when you're not something like a Marvel where it's like people are seeing every single movie, people are excited about these, there is buzz around them, even if it's maybe not characters they would have gone and seen, thought they would have 10 years ago before all this started hitting. But to me, as a film goer, it starts to get exhausting of, well, if I go see this, am I going to be kind of confused the whole time about what's going on because I didn't go see Morbius or I didn't go see... To me, that just gets exhausting. And when you don't have the franchise sort of recognition to back that up and the fandom to back that up, I think it's a total misfire. Just make a good movie where it's like, I don't know if I care about Madam Web, but if I hear it's great, I'll check it out.
You know what else, Sean? You just made the point. When you ask somebody about Captain America or Thor, in your mind, you kind of can tell what kind of a movie you would get.
Yes.
Like vaguely understand
Yes.
what
Right,
it would
yeah.
be. You ask somebody, what's a Kraven the Hunter movie even going to be? I don't know. Unless he's hunting Spider-Man or hunting Venom, which is a brilliant idea. That's what Venom 3 should actually probably be about. You don't know what it is. You can't even, I mean, you say Top Gun Maverick, people are like, I get it.
Yeah.
You know, you say Star Wars, you say Star Trek, you say Fast and Furious.
You say shark on the 4th of July.
You say, you got a pet. I mean, but people get it. You know, whereas what is a Morbius movie going to be? Other than the fact, okay, he's a vampire. But what's the story? We don't know.
You asked what Sony's big problem is, and I think their big problem was their biggest win, and that was No Way Home. After they got $1 billion, it felt
$2
like,
billion.
or $2 billion, they smelled that money, and it's like, you know how Marvel is kind of like Sony's like the person, the gambler that lost all their money, and Marvel helped them get back on their feet. And now that they got all this money, they're gonna go back and do the same thing again, probably, and lose it all.
And a lot of these plans were in motion before Spider-Man made $2 billion. And here's the problem with that is that it just seems like when Sony is focused on making a great individual movie, they tend to have pretty good results. Like, say what we will and what I have said about The Amazing Spider-Man 2, which I don't think is as bad as a lot of people make it out to be, but still, I thought the first Amazing Spider-Man with Andrew Garfield was great. I really liked that.
I did too.
Obviously, the Spider-Man 3 with Tobey Maguire, not so good, but Spider-Man 1 and 2 particularly, I still think Spider-Man 2 is still a top 10 greatest comic book film ever made. So they just got to get their attention back to making great single movies. And if you do want to make a shared cinematic universe, which who doesn't? Be smarter. Not this, hey, let's just say Vulture shows up. Why? Not sure. Now let's say he flies. Wait a minute. If you look back at the Spider-Man movie about how he got his technology, that's not applicable here. How does he even have the Vulture suit now? Don't worry about it. And anyway, guys, question is for you. What do you think about all this? Apparently, even Kevin Feige has warned Sony, saying, be careful about trying to do a big shared cinematic universe. What do you think about that whole thing? Jump down to the comment section below and leave your thoughts there.